afternoon, and good evening to you, wherever and whenever you are joining us. Welcome to our latest edition of What Caught My Eye, or WCME Sports. As always, I'm your host, the coach Nick Vesci, joined by the boy Stephen Vesci and the man Stephen Comlow.
Yo.
If you're new to our show, we like to think of ourselves as the sports show for sports fans about sports. We like to focus on what happens inside the lines of competition, as opposed to some of the TMZ tabloid-like headlines that unfortunately dominate much of our brains from the sports world nowadays. Kind of like a throwback to what we grew up with in terms of how sports is talked about, looked at, and put into perspective. Now, before we get into our top catch of the evening, just a reminder to follow us on all of our social media. That's on X, Instagram, Facebook, and now on TikTok and Snapchat at UCME_sports. Our new episodes drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. You can find all of this information as well on our website, WCMEsports.com. And be on the lookout for our new content shows, WCME Golf, WCME Basketball, WCME Hockey, and WCME Soccer, coming soon to a phone, device, computer, radio near you. Now, without further ado, our top catch this week is the unveiling of the NCAA tournaments for both the men's and the women's March Madness. For a lot of people, they view this time of year and maybe this month as the best month of the year, sporting-wise, because of the madness that ensues.
I do that.
It is stuff that can't be written, basically. It is a soap opera and a reality show and an action movie and a drama all wrapped up in one crazy product that's played out by kids, essentially, right?
Yeah.
High teens, young, these kids that played out, and it's kind of amazing to watch, right? It's something that you...
for a lot of upsets.
Yes, a lot of upsets. It is some of the most compelling theater that you'll ever witness or experience in your life. If you haven't gotten the pleasure of tuning in for it, this may be your weekend to do it coming up. But last week, we wrapped up the conference championships for both the men's and the women's. And so, again, the fields are set. The fields of 68 are set. I think it's 68, 64 on the women's side. I don't know if the women do a first.
They do a first four.
They do it, so they have 68 as well.
Yes.
So 68 schools. Before we get in and break down the bracket, which I hope one of you have the brackets pulled up on the computer, jabronis.
I guess we could pull it up on the computer.
Yeah, while I'm talking, pull it up, please. Please click clack on your keys and make noise of something that probably should have been done before. Thank you. Thanks. Before we get into the bracket, I did have a note for us that I thought was kind of cool. I went ahead and looked at all of the schools that got both their men's and women's teams into their respective tournaments. And it's 27 schools in total, which is almost half of the field for both sides, which I think is amazing. And I'd like to recognize those schools. Again, this is in no particular order. Just take a second. Norfolk State, Grand Canyon, Ole Miss, Baylor, I hardly know her, San Diego State, Michigan State, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Liberty, Oklahoma, UConn, High Point, UC San Diego, Iowa State, Louisville, Michigan, Tennessee, Creighton, Illinois, Texas, Duke, Vanderbilt, Oregon, UNC, Maryland, Alabama, and UCLA.
Yeah, I noticed
That's
it said UNC and not West Virginia.
That's incredible that almost half of the field, 27 out of the 68 teams in each side, are from the same school. That's an incredible achievement. I wanted that to be celebrated because that's a triumph of an athletic department.
It's an investment into basketball.
Yeah, it really is. Because again, it's not like one informs the other technically, right? You have two coaches that, maybe they talk to each other. I'm sure they communicate, right? But it's not like, the men's coach is coaching both teams, like the men's and women's coach, right? You don't see Dawn Staley out there coaching the South Carolina men's team for a couple games, right? It's different coaches, different programs essentially, but it's one athletics department. I think that is worthy of celebrating that triumph of an athletics department to get both of your teams in. That's an amazingly cool achievement, in my opinion. Back to the bracket, as Comlow, our producer, has fondly put up for us to look at. He is this. Yeah, keep fondling that keyboard. He is
fucking that chicken.
Thank you. That's I was getting that. Ernie Anastas, is that his name up in New York?
Yeah. Tender forecast from a tender man.
Yeah, if you don't know that clip, that's about 20 years old at this point. You can find that on YouTube.
It's gotta be older than that.
all over the internet. For those of you wondering, but Kamala has pulled up the men's bracket for us as we
This
dissect
is not
it.
me. This is not me.
That's the boy.
Yeah,
Stevie's
I did
pulled
that.
it up. Hands up. Hand check. Right. I like we're in the back of the bus. Now, the men's bracket here, we've got our number 1 overall seed is Auburn. Auburn, I think I read, played arguably the toughest schedule in the history of college basketball, which is insane. I believe they finished 28-4 or 28-5. Something.
I think it's 27-4. I want to say.
But either way, to get out of the toughest schedule in history and only lose that many games and beat the teams that they beat is very worthy of the number 1 overall seed. They've been very impressive this whole year. I would assume that Duke was the number 2 overall seed based off where they are.
Yep.
Number 3 overall seed would have been Houston based off of where they are. And the
Midwest.
And number 4, the other number 1 is Florida, who won the SEC championship over Tennessee. I believe those are the correct 4 teams, in my opinion, to be number 1s. The 4 teams that stood out the most this year. And really, as we get more and more into this, one thing that became apparent to me in terms of like the seeding is basically teams. I mean, you could argue seeds 2 through 10, but 3 through 10 definitely. There's like no separation between those teams. 3 through 8, 3 through 9. If you're seeded there, you're like 1 or 2 games away. If you're Creighton at number 9, you're like 1 or 2 games away from being a 4 seed. Like there is very little separation in that middle part of the bracket. But those 4 teams, Duke, Auburn, Houston, and Florida, they separated themselves mightily. They're very much the most deserving for 1 seeds.
This is in recent memory probably one of the strongest top 4 we've had in a long time.
Yeah, I think that's fair because a lot of times there's a debate over like who's the 4th number 1, and that 4th number 1 is like 1 or 2 games from being a 3, right?
Correct.
But here, we just saw with Auburn, they lost 3 of their last 5 games.
The last 4.
Their last 4, something crazy like that, and they were still clearly the number 1 overall seed.
There also has not been a national champion who has gone into the tournament who has lost 3 out of the last 4.
I buy that. That
there.
Just a note. Thank you. I buy that. A couple puzzling things, but interesting to me again is that point about the separation between seeds like 3 through 9, right? And an example is over here in the South region with Michigan at number 5. When if you look at their basketball power index, which is I think one of the more accurate readings and measurements of how good a team is, they are ranked lower than Creighton and Louisville. They're 4 and 5 seeds differently, respectively. Right? That's a massive gap. If these teams are ranked in the top 25 right now, Louisville's going to be ranked way higher
Louisville was ranked number 10 in the final AP poll.
Yeah.
I know the AP poll doesn't mean anything, but it does have some sort of general guide a little bit. They were every team, the top 10 teams, it was like 1-1-1, 2-2-2, 3-3-3, and then 8.
Yeah.
And this one makes no sense to me. I really think the committee looked at their resume and looked at Memphis's resume and flipped them. Like accidentally flipped them.
But Memphis shouldn't have been an 8 or 9 either. The Memphis is seated accordingly at a 5 in my opinion.
But this is outrageous.
Yes, because when you look at
Clemson, I believe Clemson is
a 5 down here in the Midwest. They're a 5.
Right here.
Yes, it's like I said.
Louisville beat Clemson twice, right? Louisville beat Clemson twice, went to the ACC championship game, and finished second in the regular season and the tournament in the ACC. So how do you have Louisville 3 seeds worse than Clemson? I think Clemson is correct at 5. How do you have Louisville as an 8? And then they asked this guy, this AD from UNC who's corrupt as shit, they asked this guy what the reason is, and he said because Clemson beat Duke. And like that was your reason? Like Louisville beat Clemson twice.
So by your lot, the transitive property, Louisville has beaten Duke twice, right? You want to go down that rabbit hole of things.
You can't. I mean, literally head to head, they played each other twice.
Yeah, no, I think there were a few things at play here. One,
handshake deals.
So much of it is nowadays about them wanting to generate matchups versus seeds, if that makes sense. Like them wanting to see a Louisville versus Creighton matchup. Okay, we want to see Louisville play Creighton. right? That's ACC Big East, and that winner will play an SEC team, so we're not crossing conferences there. How can we make that happen in terms of the visual of the bracket? And I think that's how you see some of these, like Oregon Liberty. I think is a same thing there. Oregon as
match of the Fiesta Bowl or what I believe
last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there are several matchups here that exist. Like BYU VCU is one of them. VCU could argue is
VCU
especially is better than an 11. They're more of like the 7, 8, 9, 10 seed. Really, if you look at their resume and like their power index compared to some of these teams. So I think it's more of creating matchups. Like a Missouri down there is a 6 seed. When you look at, again, Louisville, Creighton, Marquette, some of these teams that have worse seeds than Missouri, I don't even know if Missouri would be ranked in the final top 25. Kentucky's another example. Kentucky at a 3 means that they're top 12 team in the country. I don't think Kentucky would be ranked top 12 by the AP poll, but you have to balance it out, because I also think one thing that the committee looks at is you can't have 2 teams from the same conference play each other in the first round, and you want to avoid 2 teams from the same conference playing each other in the second round. And so it's so many SEC teams in the tournament that throws a wrench into that. That I think that's not being talked about enough as to why you see some of these things where that doesn't add up. Well, how could this team would be ranked so much higher and has these things, why are they ranked here versus here? I think it's all about creating the matchups and satisfying those rules that they have, because there's also other rules about where teams can play and are going to play. So there's a lot that goes into it, which creates politicking, really is what it does. And that's an issue.
Happened. It's a huge issue. I seriously think there was a handshake deal between Sankey and this AD from UNC that is on the committee, and by the way, and Xavier's just this third party that somehow snuck in out of nowhere.
I slip in.
They literally slipped in. No one, for some reason, no one's talking about them. They shouldn't be in either. But they use criteria to get Texas and Oklahoma. And Oklahoma gets safely in as a 9 seed. They finished 13th in the SEC with 6 conference wins. Texas finishes 14th in the SEC with 6 conference wins. But if you want to go by quad 1 wins, which the committee probably went, Oklahoma and Texas have 7 quad 1 wins, right? So that's the criteria that gets Texas and Oklahoma in. So then you go, okay, quad 1 wins is important. Let's go through that. Xavier has 1. UNC is 1 in quad 1 games. And then you look at my Mountaineers, who won 6 quad 1 games, 4 of which were quad 1A. And then they said, well, we need to figure out a way to get UNC in and keep West Virginia out. Let's say Tucker DeVries was injured. That's why we're keeping him out. He was injured December 6th. Actually, I think it might have been before that. They played their entire conference, like the entire conference schedule, without Tucker DeVries. They beat Kansas on the road without him. They beat Iowa State without him. Those are 2. That's 1 more win in quad 1 than UNC has. And by the way, UNC played Kansas. That makes no sense. And then you look at Indiana as well. UNC played Michigan State. They lost to them. Indiana beat Michigan State on the road.
Yeah, this whole thing, I know everyone wants to go to the corruption, collusion route because that's kind of what we're trained for. Unfortunately, we've been duped and led astray so many times by the people leading us in our society that we have defaulted to that. A little to our own fault, but little not so much because of the precedent that's been set, right? I mean, we don't have to go back much further than last college football season with Florida State not making it, right?
I seriously think Sankey was like, we didn't get enough SEC teams into the CFP. We need to get more.
I mean, again, it creates that doubt. That's the issue. Is you hate to say, bring some of these things up because it sounds accusatory of people who are in the room and we're not in the room, right? But at the same time, again, there's been precedent. There's been things that are said that are questionable. Like you brought up the AD from North Carolina, who I believe is the head. Committee. I don't think he's just on the committee. I think he's the head of the committee, and so that's not a good look when all this happens.
He said he recused himself,
which I get, right? He probably had to do.
But that doesn't mean as well as I do, Nick. That doesn't mean dick.
No, I do, but again, it's one of those things where you should go back to the structure of it. I don't think a blue blood like a UNC should have the head person at a committee because blue bloods, your Kentucky's, UNC's, Dukes, they have agendas that a
They're gonna try
lesser
to
school.
You just talked about the matchups. They're going to try to get themselves the best matchups.
Yes, they have agendas that a Marquette doesn't really, right? And that's why having one of them as head of the committee is dangerous. It's a slippery slope because they already
need to do it.
Well, the thing is though,
bracketologists are completely objective.
I understand that,
and they are able to give you exactly like
but
you ask them a question, they will give you exactly what they looked at and the reasons why.
They are for now though, that people can be bought and manipulated, right? So that's a slippery slope as well. So the reason you have the people in the schools is because it makes it so you're still part of that organization. And that's why I think having that blue blood as the head is a very, very slippery slope because of the agendas and the power that person yields. Yes, theoretically in that room, that person should have just as much power as the Appalachian State AD. But realistically, that's not. It's unequal. That UNC AD has more power than most of the people in there. So that's when these kind of tinfoil hat conspiracy theories come about because you have that. Now, the one thing that I don't like that has stuck with me from his comments is the Tucker DeVries injury because
it's a cop-out.
Well, it's weird. It doesn't sit well when you hear it because yes, in the past they've used injuries to affect seeding, right? But oftentimes almost every time it's an injury that happens right before the tournament. Like I believe Oregon a couple years ago had, I think like Bull got hurt and they dropped into a 5 seed. But I think Oregon's going on to run to the Final Four. But and so that happens. But it's injuries right before the tournament.
The majority of your year without him.
That's the issue.
You end up having more. I believe they had 4 quad 1 wins without him.
That's the issue is using that as an excuse, like you said, when you've played so much without that player. Because basically what you're saying is that West Virginia's only shot to ever make the tournament this year was to win their conference championship.
Correct.
Because
I really believe, based on what they said, what this UNC AD said as his reasoning, that if West Virginia beat Colorado, it wouldn't have mattered. It would not have mattered. They would have had to have beaten Houston.
Yeah,
which they weren't going to do.
No, but again, more to the point is that that's another slippery slope because then teams will be looking at, oh, well, our best player got hurt, so we're done. Pack it up because it does. Yeah, because it doesn't matter what we do.
Yeah,
because this is now precedent that WVU is precedent for. Oh, our best player got hurt. Doesn't matter if it be Kansas and Iowa State without him. We won't get in the tournament, even if we meet the criteria, because they'll lean on that. And it'd be interesting to see if they do that in the future. And that's where that corruption, in quotation marks, and that doubt creeps in, because if they don't do it in the future, then you can sit here and say, well, what gives? Like, why? Like, you still haven't given us a reason why they were left out. Now, I will say, again, just to be devil's advocate, hey, West Virginia, how about don't lose to Kansas State twice? How about don't lose to Colorado? How about add those 3-4 more wins?
Arizona State at home, TCU on the road,
which are horrible losses. How about
those bad losses? Yeah.
Take those 4 or 5 more wins and enter the tournament at 24-7, and then you have nothing to worry about. So at the end of the day, West Virginia did control their destiny and didn't do enough to get themselves out of it. Because at the end of the day, it's subjective, and you don't want to leave it to chance or quote unquote corruption.
Okay, yes, I agree with you. You never want to leave it to chance, and there were probably 4 games on that schedule that should have been won. I agree with you there. However, I also need to. It's also the first time that all 111 bracketologists had them in the field, and they didn't make it. That is a problem.
Yes, that's it. That's again where the eyebrow raising comes into play.
And there was one bid thief this year. It was Colorado State. There was one bid thief,
and they were a bubble team.
Yes, last year there were, I think, like 5 or 6, and it was unprecedented, and that's why a few of the teams got left out. And it was like, God, that sucks for like a few of these teams, but they would have been in had there not have been bid thieves. But this year with one bid thief, all 111 bracketologists get you in. I'm literally looking at it thinking like, oh, who's the matchup? And I'm watching Selection Sunday like, oh, they're really going to wait till the last 7-10 matchup. And then Arkansas's name comes up. And I'm like, did I miss it? Did we get left off? Like, what happened? There wasn't even a question for so many people. The amount of bracketologists on X were like, I've never seen this before. this makes no sense. Like that's where the corruption thing comes
Yes,
in.
because and it doesn't help again that UNC's a name, and two that their AD is head of the committee. That and again, like you said, you can say you recused yourself.
Really hard for that to be coincidental.
Recuse yourself all you want. You create that doubt, and the only way to get that doubt away would be to come out in front of it before it happens and say, "Hey, because
Correct.
this debate was happening, we asked the North Carolina athletic director to step out when we discussed this." Right?
Correct.
And just say that instead of saying it at the end, because at the end people can go, "I don't believe you."
Yeah,
right? But
West
if you said it
Virginia
before and
and-
people could say, "I saw him in the hallway," then you have a case.
Yeah, I mean, there was something like 27 out of 111 bracketologists had UNC in. 50 of them had Texas, but all 111 had West Virginia. It's a problem.
Now, the other thing that is discounted, and I think to a lot of people, based off like their reaction to the governor's kind of hilarious, whatever you want to call that press conference
The National
about it,
Corrupt Athletic
yes,
Association.
is the financial ramifications of this are massive for the state of West Virginia.
Yes,
You
yes.
think about, again, not many people know this, but right, West Virginia, I believe, is like the least populated state. There's something, or like least dense.
I believe we're the only state since World War II to go down
in population. Yeah, it's not a very populous state. There's not a lot of livable land because of its terrain. It's a small, tight-knit community that doesn't have a lot. But the one thing that they have is West Virginia University that contributes so much to the state. And by making it into the NCAA tournament, your school is rewarded money. And each win you get money. And not only do you get money now, you get money every year for like every win, right? It's something crazy where it's like if I win 2 games, I'm getting like an exponential amount of money. Like I get it this year, I get it next year, and it like grows in like a few years, you're getting money. And that's a massive financial boon for the entire state of West Virginia. Whereas in the state of North Carolina, UNC and the university getting it doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anything for that state, right? But the state of West Virginia earning a bid to the tournament is huge for that state, not just from the fandom perspective, but the financial perspective. And that's lost as well and that's why I think you see the governor reacting so strongly, because this is affecting their state now. Whereas again, in tech, like Houston not getting in the state of Texas or whatever, name any of those public UC schools, and like UCLA not getting in is not affecting the state of California. But in that small state of West Virginia, them not getting in affects the state in a big way.
By the way, I don't know if you saw this, but you know who came away with a nice bonus, with a nice 6-figure bonus for making the tournament? UNC's athletic director.
Yeah.
Bubba Cunningham.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where again we're not in the room, so you don't want to like make baseless allegations.
That's all we've been doing for the last 10 minutes.
But what I'm saying here is
how baseless they are.
That's the issue, is that because of precedent that's been set within the NCAA and questions about the integrity of how it's run, right? These concerns, these concerns are valid. Whether they are founded or not in terms of what comes out in the future is almost moot because of what's happened in the past and because of the optics of what's going on. It's not a good look. It really isn't. And maybe we need now to sit down and discuss our process, because not in addition to the egregious snub of West Virginia in many people's eyes, like we've talked about before, the seeding is off, like completely.
Yeah.
And if you look at the women's bracket, which we'll get to here in a second, their seeding is almost identical to what like their AP rankings would be and to what the BPI, the Basketball Power Index, would be. Like you're not having very many that are misplaced. The only one really when you go through that bracket is West Virginia, who's screwed again on the women's side because they earned a 6 seed when really their metrics should say they're a 3 or 4 seed.
By the way, if you want to segue into the women's one.
Well, I mean, we could, but we didn't discuss unless you want to discuss more matchups here or go through. We could pick our first round games. We could do that.
I would like to discuss some matchups because there are a couple in this first round that are very, very difficult. But we could start. How about Michigan, UC San Diego?
Yes.
That is an intriguing matchup here. Michigan turns the ball over a ton, and UC San Diego, I believe, led the country in forced turnovers.
They did.
And UC San Diego, the Tritons, by the way.
First year is a D1, right?
Well, no, this is their first year of eligibility. because there's a 4-year transition period, which again goes back to the issues of the NCAA integrity of why are you having a team have to wait 4 years? What's going on here? Would they have to pay you to get in now? Right. This goes back to that. But yeah, this is their first year of eligibility. 30-4, something like that. Dethroned UC Irvine as the class of the Big West. They're a good team. They can do a lot of different things as well too. And one thing that I notice is they can guard big men, because UC Irvine's best player was some giant German, right? And they neutralized him. Yes, he's not Vlad Golden, but at least they have experience of how do we handle a big dominant center, which Vlad Golden kind of stirs the pot for Michigan. So yes, that's an intriguing matchup as well on that side of the bracket. If you're looking on the right side, a few here in Duke's region, VCU, BYU, and St. Mary's Vanderbilt are the two that stood out to me. Okay. St. Mary's and Vanderbilt are two teams that can beat anyone, anywhere, anytime. I really believe that. They have that ability. They are deep. They play well. They're well coached. They have the athleticism to stick with pretty much any team in the country on any given night. So they're dangerous there.
That is a fundamentally sound game.
Mm-hmm.
Vanderbilt, I watched Vanderbilt earlier this year. That's a fun team, and we know St. Mary's is just a basketball school. Like, they play basketball.
Well, yeah, I don't think they have football.
Good. Shut up, Nick.
They do. I believe they're pretty good at baseball and softball. I have to double check that, but I believe they're decent in those sports as well. And the BYU VCU game is interesting. VCU's, I guess we said earlier in the show, you could say they're underseeded. They could be an 8 or 9 seed, really. But again, I think, like I said before, they wanted this matchup of these two schools. Maybe because they like the 6 combined letters in their names. It looks good on a graphic. But that's intriguing because, again, BYU's shown that they can run the doors off of some people, but then can play a game and not show up. And, like, who are these guys? So yeah. VCU plays tough defense. They give great effort. Max Shulga, 10 player of the year. They got the 6th man of the year. I forget his name. Was it Zed Jackson? I want to say that's his name.
Bama Seals an X factor.
Yes. So they got
I think they're most important.
They have dudes at VCU. Yeah. True dudes there. So that's a dangerous team.
This East region, if you want to watch fireworks, like if you are one of those fans that is like, I want high scoring, I want to see the ball go in the hoop, the East region is the one you need to be watching. Because we talk about Oregon scores a lot. Arizona scores a lot. BYU can put up numbers. VCU can put up threes. Wisconsin, this is not your father's Wisconsin team. They've I think hit 90 points 3 times this year, which is I think the first time since the 70s or something. This is the only one that might be a slow game. St. Mary's and Vandy. Alabama is the highest scoring team in the country.
Yeah, and Bob Moe has got their work cut out for him.
Yeah.
Scroll down to West and Midwest. Like I said, we had Florida and Houston as the 1 seeds here. UConn and Gonzaga as 8 seeds are rough matchups for the 1s, Houston and Florida, to advance. Because those are 2 teams that to start the year were ranked, I believe, in the top 10 of the AP poll. UConn is 2-time defending national champion. With the coaches that they have, going to be a difficult matchup. It doesn't matter when or where they play them. That could have been in the Final Four or, again, the second round. It's going to be tough for both 1 seeds to get past. And I'd argue in both of those regions, I would say that might be the toughest game those 1 seeds face on their way to the Final Four because, like we said before, the separation in seeding from like 3 through 10 or 2 through 10, if you want to look at it, is not much. Like those 5 seeds could easily be 3 seeds. Those 3 seeds could easily be 7 seeds, right? So all those teams have massive questions. Memphis, Maryland, Missouri, Texas Tech, St. John's, Clemson, Purdue, Kansas, Illinois, Kentucky, UCLA, Tennessee, all have massive questions in my opinion. So those are all teams that are prone to upsets, all of them.
This is the matchup I could not figure out, and it's Clemson and McNeese. McNeese has Will Wade as their head coach, and they are really, really good.
Yes, they were good last year.
Clemson returned a lot of guys from, I believe, an Elite 8 run.
Mm-hmm.
They returned pretty much their entire team from that year. I love this Clemson team. I love the way they're built. I think they're built for the postseason. But that McNeese and Will Wade team bothers me so much. I feel like Clemson can win 2 games out of here or make a nice run if they get past McNeese.
Yeah. Another matchup on this side, on the left side, is that Missouri-Drake matchup. Like we said, Missouri easily could have been ranked lower, but I believe, and Drake could have been ranked higher. I believe it was looking at how do we get this a matchup that we want and satisfy certain criteria. And with them being there, that's again intriguing. That's winnable for Drake. It really is, and it's a fascinating matchup because you want to see how Drake plays. Again, this is a team, 31 wins on the year,
30. Yeah, 30.
which is incredible in any season to win that many games. And so you get them playing against Mizzou, who they themselves is a great story because I believe last year they didn't win a single SEC game. I believe that's So for them to get here, that's why I think they wanted this matchup because it's two really good, resilient comeback stories in a lot of ways. Yes, Drake had made the tournament before, but you talked about how their coach left and their best player left. So very interesting matchup there. The 2-7 matchups, I think, are here. If you have the Kansas and UCLA winning those games, playing against St. John's and Tennessee, respectively, those are interesting. Kansas, St. John's, Bill Self versus Rick Pitino is again, a fascinating matchup. Kansas is the preseason #1 team in the country. St. John's kind of came out of nowhere to win 30 games, which is bonkers. So if we get to that, that's a really intriguing matchup. I mean, heck, even the first game, Self versus Calipari, right? That's an intriguing as hell matchup, right?
How many
so
times
that's
they go
very
at the start of each year with the Kansas-Kentucky matchups?
Yep. Or even Kansas-Memphis. Remember that?
Yeah.
Mario Chalmers, get a hand up.
Chalmers.
And then again, Tennessee, if you get to Tennessee UCLA, that's Rick Barnes and Mick Cronin at UCLA. Again, very fascinating matchup. Two great coaches that, leading different programs too. That's the other thing that's interesting about that is same with St. John's, right? Pitino's not who, you don't associate him with St. John's right away because he's only been there a couple of years, but he's been so many other places. Same thing with Rick Barnes and Mick Cronin. And I think those are interesting matchups as well. Now, do you want to give our picks to Final Four and win it all, or no, because we want to save it for next weekend after our first round of games? Because we don't want to poo-poo and discount how great of a weekend coming up is. With the first weekend's the best. Spoiler alert.
Let's give the picks and then do a mental health check-in next week.
Yeah, okay. Well, Kamala, who do you have in your Final Four?
Final Four is Auburn, Duke, St. John's, Houston.
Very good. Who do you have winning? Or who you got winning?
Duke.
Duke over who?
Auburn.
Duke, Auburn, boy.
Oh, yeah.
I have Michigan State, Duke, Houston, St. John's, with Houston over St. John's in the national championship.
Interesting.
All defense.
And I have Michigan State, Florida, Duke, and Houston. And I have Houston over Florida in the championship game. Back in December, Houston and Florida were the two teams I had picked. And I was hoping this whole year, praying, please, when they come up with this bracket, whatever seeds they are, because it didn't matter to me. I'd already made my mind up. I was like, whatever seeds they are, make sure they're on opposite sides so I can pick them in the championship game and make this easy on myself. And they did. So for me, the hardest pick was actually, who do I pick? Florida over Houston. And I stewed over that. And I ultimately went with Houston and Kelvin Sampson because of the coaching. Yes, Todd Golden's done an amazing job at Florida. He did an amazing job in San Francisco before he got down to Gainesville. Sampson he's basically accomplished everything but this, right? And so I think that experience would be the X factor in a game that would be, in my opinion, very evenly matched and very fun to watch.
I was thinking about
that's mine.
These 4 #1 seeds. You can make the argument for each one of them who's the best in the country. That is pretty crazy. Usually there's maybe 1 or 2 where you go, okay, this team's definitely been the best, right? To sit there and go, Florida got the 4th 1 spot. You could very easily say they're the best team in the country, or at least they're playing like the best team in the country right now. And I can say the same thing about Houston.
Yeah, I agree. It is interesting.
You can literally pick and choose just which one you think is favorite. Your favorite, your bias, whatever it is. You pick a stat you want to go with and say, I can make the argument for Duke, Auburn, Houston, or Florida.
Yeah. Yep. Anything else? Men's bracket wise, any tips, any trends before we move on to the women's bracket?
I believe Ken Palm has some sort of stat where it's if you're in the certain offensive and defensive efficiency, I believe it's top 40.
40?
I think it's top 40 for both. It might be top 25 for offense or something. But if you're in those spots, historically, those have been the national championships. So a team that I have in a national championship is St. John's, and they do not fit that criteria. So if you're filling out your brackets, like I put a lot of favoritism in mind. But if you're filling out your bracket, look at some of these stats where offensive and defensive efficiency from Ken Pom.
Yeah, here I had one. It's every national champion has been inside the top 57 in offensive efficiency and top 44 in defensive efficiency pre-tournament, and that's from Ken Pom. So teams that fit that: Auburn, Duke, Alabama, Florida, Gonzaga, Houston, Texas Tech, Wisconsin, Illinois, Clemson, Arizona, Iowa State, Mississippi State, Louisville, Tennessee, Maryland, Marquette, Ohio State, who's not even in, Michigan State, Ole Miss, Oregon, St. Mary's, Michigan, VCU, UCLA, UC San Diego, Creighton, A&M, and Georgia, and teams that don't, notably St. John's, Kentucky, Kansas, UConn, Memphis, Purdue, Mizzou, BYU, Baylor, and Vandy. So interesting. That's kind of like what you were saying. You have to be in that sweet spot, which makes sense. You can't be all one or the other, and you can't be too little on one and not the other.
Yeah.
And now do we have the women's bracket? Someone.
Yeah, I got you.
Like I said, the women's bracket, much less controversial. The only controversy I could see here, a couple of them. UConn's a 2 seed. So before we get there are 1 seeds. You have UCLA, who I believe is the number 1 overall seed, yes. South Carolina, and then you have Texas and USC, Southern Cal, as our 1 seeds. And you could argue UConn should have been a 1 seed, but the issue is, well, who are you going to bump out? I would argue Texas. That's who I would bump out. At the same time, it's hard to argue with what Texas has done with their victory over South Carolina. I think South Carolina destroyed UConn. So it kind of gets to that slippery slope of who do you move. But really not that big a deal for UConn to be a 2 seed. Again, I think they should have been a 1. They've been kind of under the radar, believe it or not, as much as UConn can be.
Kind of crazy.
Your number 2 seeds, like I said, UConn. You had TCU, which is that feel-good story. They may be a little overseeded based off some metrics, but I mean, my God, they won 31-3, I think is their record. They won the Big 12. Beat Baylor 3 times, who's been historically the class of women's Big 12 basketball. So very much deserved for them there. It was very cool. If you scroll up, you've got Duke and NC State, which again, you could argue they're more of 3 seeds. But I guess that shows, to me, that's more emblematic of the depth in the women's game that we haven't seen in the past, is that you have them there. And again, LSU, I would think, could have slid up to a 2 seed. Kim Mulkey's an incredible coach. Yeah. But their strength of schedule, I think, at a conference wasn't as good. So they lacked some of those big wins there. UNC is a 3 seed. Again, they got some good wins going for them. Going back down, Notre Dame is a notable 3 seed. That's another team that could have easily been a 2 seed. I mean, they were, my goodness, ranked number 1 in the country a few weeks ago. Right? So to see them, the Lumberjacks, to see them slip to a 3 seed spells danger for me for that bracket. That's Texas's bracket. That one I could see blowing up because that's got some. God, there's some good schools in that one. Yes,
Texas, Notre Dame, TCU, Tennessee.
Oh yeah, that is like I said, that one could easily blow up. Interesting second round matchup that you could see is Iowa versus Oklahoma in that bottom left region of your bracket. If you're looking at it, 2 teams that beat some people, and you could argue those seeds easily could have been flipped, right? So interesting matchup there in that region.
It's a huge deal in the women's game.
Yes.
Right? We've talked about it before. If you're the top 4 seeds, you get home court. I can't talk. You get home court advantage for the first 2 rounds. The first weekend.
That's huge.
That's massive.
Yeah, it really is gigantic. Scrolling up, I mean, you're right. That's a big difference because Iowa is one of the toughest places to play in the country. Yeah. Scrolling up, I'll be remiss if we don't mention your Mountaineers again. Looking at the seeding and stuff in like the power index and their record, they took care of more business. They took care of their business much more than the men did. Not like argument. They definitely did.
I believe they could have gotten
a 3. I mean, they could have been 3, 4, 5 somewhere, and to get a 6.
Look whose region they end up being in.
UNC's.
Chapel Hill.
Yeah, it's these committees.
Need some retribution here.
These committees don't have anything to do with each other.
I understand that,
but yes, it is very.
Mountaineer fans might be showing up in force in Chapel Hill.
It's very, very interesting. The LSU part, I think they got a good draw over here to make a run at it because of who they're going to play. Baylor, again, very dangerous. Again, they've been the class of the Big 12. Don't count them out. But, historically in the women's bracket, one of the reasons it doesn't get as much publicity is because of the lack of upsets. I believe there's never been a 14.
I mean, look at.
There's never been a 15 beat a 2. A 1's beaten a
spreads.
16 once, and that happened like 25, 30 years ago, and which is kind of amazing that happened. But it's one of those where the depth still isn't there to get the madness, but you have, again, intriguing matchups down the line. I think that's what's it's almost like the women's bracket is like an NBA basketball game. It's not as fun to watch until the final like half of the fourth quarter. And it's not like, right, if you look at the regional finals of some of these, like the potential matchups, like the best one, that Spokane region, Southern Cal and Juju Watkins versus Paige Beckers and UConn. I mean, that is a dream. That is an incredible matchup. That is national championship worthy. That is like an amazing game. And that's what we could see in the Elite Eight, right? That to me, like that has me jazzed up more than any of these other matchups, even like an upset happening. Because it just, again, it doesn't happen. A 13 beating a 4 is so rare. A 12 beating a 5 is so rare. It's not going to happen, right? Yeah. Could we see a CJ McCollum's daughter playing for Lehigh?
That's funny. There. But yeah, if you look at the spreads on these, like the spreads between the ones matchups on the women's side versus the men's, it's almost double. Like South Carolina's a 42.5 point spread.
Take the points.
I believe on the men's side, it's like the most is like 24 or something.
Yeah. See Richmond getting in there. Richmond is arguably overseeded. That they could have been a much lower seed based off some metrics that they have there. And Georgia Tech could have been a higher seed. But again, seeding wise, you don't have a lot of things to complain with. You don't have a lot of things to complain about teams not getting in. I know our Virginia Tech people would argue that they should have been in over maybe some of the Ivy League teams, because I believe the Ivy League got what? Did they get 3 teams go back to the bottom? Harvard plays Michigan State in the first round. Princeton's in one of the first 4 games, I believe, if you scroll to the bottom. Princeton's in there. In Columbia. Wow, that's amazing. That's 3 bids for the Ivy League is Princeton, Columbia, and Harvard.
How about William and Mary?
Yes, I know. I believe, and the great Doug Howard could back this up, the men's team is one of the only teams in college basketball to not make the tournament, ever, in its entire history. William & Mary's never made the NCAA basketball tournament. And I believe it's like the longest drought of any team, especially after Northwestern made it a couple years ago, and that broke their drought.
When Doug Howard becomes their coach and they go on a run and start winning their conference championships.
That's true. You heard that here first. Rumor mill, the great Doug Howard for the men's basketball coach at the college down there in Williamsburg. Final 4, who you got for the women's side? Kamo?
I have NC State, UConn, Duke, TCU.
Who do you got winning?
TCU over UConn, 66-63.
I like it. Boy?
I got UCLA, that's UCLA.
Thank you.
South Carolina, TCU, and UConn, with South Carolina over UCLA until you knock off Dawn Staley.
Yeah, Dawn Staley from
UVA.
Thank you. I have UCLA, UConn, Notre Dame, and South Carolina. And I have UConn over South Carolina. That was another one that I had to sit there and think about. And it came back to a couple things. When would be out for blood after I believe they beat them down. I could be mistaken, but I thought South Carolina beat them by like 30 points earlier this year. Also, UConn women haven't won. I believe, you can double check me on this, but I believe they haven't won since 2016, a national championship. That's almost a decade. That's too long. That's like Aaron Judge not getting a hit for 4 straight games. He's gonna your pitcher on the mound is shaking like he's gonna hit 2 off of me. Like it's just gonna happen. That's kind of how I feel about this UConn team, especially because, again, as much as UConn could be under the radar, they have been. The talk of the women's game has been with Juju Watkins, USC, and UCLA, and South Carolina, understandably so, with the championships and the winning streaks that they've been on. And the SEC has been dominant in the women's game as well. So all the talk's been there. Not so much on UConn. They've just been lurking there. And at a 2 seed, just lurking, hanging around, waiting to chomp. And I think this is blood in the water for Gino. I believe that. Anything else from this side before we move on?
No, sir.
No? Love it. All right, so that's going to take us to our golf segment. All right, golf, as always, is sponsored by Long Jewelers in Virginia Beach at the corner of Shore Drive and North Great Neck Road next to Hot Tuna. Come in for their award-winning selection and customer service. There's a reason that they are voted the best of the beach every year. Again, when you have the opportunity to make the choice of, I gotta get something for that special someone, whether it's an engagement or an anniversary, whatever it is, remember, you belong at Long Jewelers because their selection and quality and prices will not be beat. You're not going to find it really anywhere else unless you go to the mine and dig the diamond out yourself. It's not going to happen. But our golf
jewelry store fantasy camp.
No, that would. I bet you'd have people signing up in droves to go into a mine and try to hack out a diamond. I really believe that. Yes, a nice hard labor jewelry store fantasy camp.
Where is the diamond?
The most underrated actor ever, Jaimin Hunsu. If you don't know who he is,
Yeah, he is really
you
good.
probably don't even know what I said because you're just not aware, but he is amazing.
Oh, Jets.
Never back down.
Jets.
Thank you. I digest. Golf-wise, we had the Players' Championship occur over the weekend in beautiful Ponte Vedra, Florida at TPC Sawgrass, home of, essentially golf is the way they look at it. It is not a major technically, but it is treated as a major. It is the unofficial fifth major. I believe it's the richest tournament in golf with the richest purse. We had boots on the ground. We had reporters in the field. Our friends David and Bailey Barnfind, which is TPC Sawgrass, is where they got married, by the way. They were there on Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, sending us some amazing clips and videos. I mean, of Scotty Scheffler, Justin Thomas. They even got JJ Spawn's putt at the end, which we'll get to in a second. But shout out to them. If you want to see some of their clips and stuff, check out our TikTok and our Instagram. They're both on there of all the stuff that they were able to capture over the weekend. It was a tremendous weekend of golf. Starting off, you had Justin Thomas, the aforementioned JT. He tied a course record with 10 under 62. 62. It's crazy on Friday. And that was to make the cut for him.
Bogeyed to tie the record.
Yes, I know. That's the crazy part.
Break it.
Yeah, he had a chance to break it. Bogey that final hole and just a bad swing out of the pine needles there on 18. But pretty amazing. Moving on, he didn't really stay in contention. He shot 78 his first round, I believe, then backed up with 62, and then went up back into the 70s for the third round, so that kind of knocked him out of contention. However, in the final round, Rory McIlroy was down 4 strokes, and he wound up taking the lead after he birdied 11, which David and Bailey have video of that, by the way, which is pretty cool, and wound up entering the clubhouse at 12 under. JJ Spawn, who said before he entered the final round in the lead, and he birdied 16 to tie McIlroy back at the lead. And his birdie putt on 18 came up just agonizingly short. I mean, he hit that putt, and even my wife Jordan was like, that's going in the hole. And it just came up short. It looked like it almost had too much speed to start and then ran out of gas. It's like an inexplicable, crazy putt. But that 18th hole is so hard, so anyone getting a shot at birdie is amazing. So it came up just short. That putt was for the win. So that meant McIlroy and Spawn, whose Spawn was in the last group, obviously, they finished the final round tied. So that means they go to the playoff. Here's the catch, though. That final round was delayed for 4 hours, like 4 hours exactly. It was delayed due to storms. So when they finished their round, the sun was essentially setting, so they couldn't do their playoff because at Sawgrass for the players, they do a 3-hole aggregate playoff with holes 16, 17, and 18. Which would take far too long.
To do it.
Is it?
We'll talk about that. Get through the playoff because I have a fix for all playoff golf.
Yes.
Okay.
And, during the playoff, Spawn hit it into the water on 17. He triple bogey that hole. That effectively ended the playoff. That gave Rory the championship. I believe it's his second time winning the Players, winning a $4.5 million prize, which is incredible, and that sweet ass trophy, which is one of the best trophies in all of sports, the golden trophy of the guy swinging the club. That is a sweet trophy. Another cool tidbit that you wouldn't know unless you've been in the Sawgrass clubhouse is there's a wall in there where all of the winners give one of their clubs to it, and they put it in a display case lining the wall. And I think you could kind of like touch the club or whatever. I forget at this point,
cool.
But walking by, I saw Rory's, I think like 3-wood or whatever. And then there's like next to like Justin Thomas's driver. And it's like, really, really cool to go see, just walk down, look at the clubs that they got. So, and the other thing that they do, they fly the flag of the country of the winner outside the clubhouse for like the next year. So the Northern Irish flag will be hung up outside the clubhouse because of Rory's victory, which is pretty cool. Now, Kamal, you wanted to say something about the way playoffs are done, because I believe, before you get into it, each tournament has a different
They can
playoff.
set their own.
They can set their own
rules.
thing. Yes.
Yeah. So one, that's madness, but we'll stick with the players. The playoffs at the players was almost perfect. I would have changed two things. One is really extreme and funny. The other,
is it partial nudity? Because I don't know if I'm on board with that.
So the first one,
Let's be honest,
it's gotta get played at night. We have to have lights on top of the grandstands.
Can't do that.
Yes, you can.
This is in Saudi Arabia.
The way lights are made now, you can get some big, like 12,000 lumen lights up there. Let's go.
Well, most of where these courses are, there's like light
That's first and
ordinances.
foremost. I don't.
You
give
can't
a
have
shit.
lights.
I don't care. You think the
in the
state's
counties
bigger than the PGA? PGA is worldwide, baby. Number two. They played the playoff holes wrong. You need to go 18, 17, 16. Because 18, while it is a difficult hole, it's gettable. So depending on how someone plays 18, then you go to 17 where someone like Spawn has the chance to double or triple bogey. And then 16 is 100% eagleable. So even if somebody drops 2 or 3 shots on 17, you're not out of it. That 18th hole, the third hole they played on yesterday didn't matter.
Yeah.
It didn't matter.
Now, I would say for a course
tell me that order is not the better way to do it.
I would say for a course at Sawgrass, I say you just play the 17th over and over again. That's what I would want. I would want to see that, and if possible at all, every time they change the pin location, if they run those guys out there and move it, that would be perfect.
If you're tied after 3 holes, I say you do sudden death on 17 all day. But I love the 3-hole aggregate, and you need to have a 4, a 5, and a 3 in there. And I think you need to play them in the order of the par 4, the par 3, the par 5. Now, this is obviously extrapolating to all of golf. I think that would just be so much better. It makes the par 5 way more meaningful and way better. Yeah, I think the 3-hole aggregate is the best way to do it, hands down.
Yeah, I mean, as much as you would love to watch these guys, I think there should be special exceptions for having to play the same hole over again. Again, some tournaments you just play 18 until someone loses, and sometimes the 18th hole is like easy, and it's like, okay, this is boring. He's going to hit 3-wood into the fairway, chip up, and it's like we're just going to keep doing this over and over again. But like at Sawgrass with the 17th, though, if you play 17 over and over again, that's brilliant. Like that is awesome.
How about the mind games Rory was playing there too on the tee box at 17? That was special. He knew full well that Spawn was looking at him and eyeballing his club choice the whole time, and Rory hits a smooth 3/4 9-iron up there. Oh my gosh. And I don't know if you saw her, because I know it was like a Monday morning and like most people have work and aren't able to watch. I watched. Yeah, no problem, for the good of the show, for the good of me. But the way did you guys see how Rory warmed up in the morning?
Was he taking Happy Gilmore hacks?
So somewhere on the Sawgrass property, there are about 4 to 5 golf balls in the opposite direction of the range, because Rory set up his TrackMan into the wind to simulate playing on 17 so he could tell what club am I hitting 135 in these wind conditions. Somewhere out there on the property are 5 Rory McIlroy Tour caliber golf balls. Which, like, hey, good for him, Like, that's not something you're going to get to do necessarily on Sunday, right? Because patrons.
Thanks.
But you're there early Monday morning. A lot of people have already caught their flights to go home, can't make it out because, again, adults with obligations. Yeah, so I think Rory played it perfectly, and it's a bad break for JJ Spawn, who I had no idea who that guy was.
Nah, he's just a guy he's been around for a while. He just makes cuts every
he
so
has, like,
often. He doesn't contend really.
He's
It is
middle of the pack golfer. He's like the same age as Rory. Has like almost the exact same number of starts as Rory, and I think has like 1 or 2 wins to his name.
No. This would have been the biggest deal of JJ Spawn's life, and that's
I mean,
we're in the season of
money he got.
Yeah, but it's not the same. We're in the season of underdogs, right? That is a true underdog story of JJ Spawn defeating Rory, and winning that championship. That would have been pretty impressive. Anything else from the players?
Yeah, can we talk about, and I'm sure Nathan is probably going to talk about some of this, but can we talk about just some of the ugly that came out of that tournament? Like Max Homa, what's going on there? Victor Hovland is lost in the woods. Like, we have so many golfers who are just completely out of it. Jordan Spieth is still dealing with injuries. I mean, Xander withdraws.
Simulators.
Xander withdraws.
Didn't Wyndham Clark have to withdraw as well from injury?
I think so. Yeah, that's my Jailbird brother. I'm also a 38-inch Jailbird putter user. For those that don't know or care to know.
I'm looking around the room and I don't see a damn soul who cares.
I'm like a Husker
that's
Wyndham
just
Clark
a spider.
with better hair.
Okay, Hardy, go wake up in the truck bed.
But
tomorrow.
you know who comes out of this looking incredible, and you already brought his name up, Justin Thomas. He's World 6 right now. We're having a great JT year. I hope this keeps up. I am a big
I think golf's
Justin Thomas fan. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
He gives a little juice, a little edge.
I think he's starting to loosen up a little bit too. He's not getting as hard on himself as he used to be. He's down there in Jupiter hanging out with Ricky Fowler on the off days.
And Tiger.
But he's
matured.
He's playing in this TGL, which I think is good because I think for the most part, most of the pros are just having fun with it. And then
but you brought up two guys who got hurt. Xander and Wyndham have been playing in it, so.
And Homa played like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
time
think
on that simulator.
Well, I think the big issue.
Sahith, I don't think played well either.
I actually don't know how he finished. That's actually a good question. He wasn't in the top 20.
I don't even know if he made the cut.
No, come on. Sahith, he's awesome. Did you see he got I saw a nice. I mean, obviously, like all eyes are on him after Full Swing. He had a big episode in Full Swing. Have you watched that yet?
No, not yet.
Which
finished,
season?
This season, the newest one. Sahith finished T52 at +2.
Yeah, it's not good.
He's going to get some money though. At least for the weekend.
I will say a story that you might not have been aware of. Danny Walker from
UVA.
From UVA.
He
was like a late last-minute alternate to get in. Like he didn't even make the field. Someone called like, "Hey, can you come down here and play?" Okay. Not only did
lives in the area or something. He's close enough to where they were like, "You can come play."
Not only did he make the cut, he finished at -9, which I think is T6, which is 3 shots off of the lead. Right? The lead just finished at -12. Right, so it's incredible. I had no idea who Danny Walker was. I'm normally up to date with the UVA guys, Denny McCarthy, Ben Coles. There's another kid who's I think still at UVA who's been was in a group with those guys at a major. I think I forget his name, but Danny Walker, pretty impressive.
Yeah,
I believe his Players Championship debut. That's pretty cool to see that.
And then one other person I'm going to bring up that comes out looking good, but he is on my shit list right now. Is Akshay. Not happy with Akshay right now. He finished T2 -10, right up there with Glover and Hoagie. Had a great tournament. Good for Akshay. That's awesome. He is taking next week off at the Valspar, and I'm not a fan of that move for him.
Why?
Because it's not a signature event, so a lot of people aren't going to be playing in it. But, this tournament should be extra special for Akshay because this was the first tournament to give him an exemption to play in back when he was 17. This was the first pro tournament he played in. So, it would be nice for him to, come out and play instead of saying, I'm tired. I don't want to play in it.
Maybe he is tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care. That's soft. That's right up there with the load management players.
Yeah.
Soft. I don't get behind that. You guys know I have a special distaste for that sort of mentality in professional level athletes. So
I will say golf is interesting though, because not every guy plays every tournament for certain reasons. One or the other. There's whatever the Vedanta Mexico Open. There's like no one in that field.
Yeah,
right.
If it's not the players, Waste Management.
Well, no, there's Bay Hill
or the Travelers.
Bay Hill 2 weeks ago.
That was a signature event.
Was it?
Yes.
Are we sure it is designated 100%. As a signature event this year? Because signature 100%. Events rotate, Kamlo.
I'm aware. Go ahead and Google it, and then you can apologize and tell me.
I'm not going to Google it, but
you can just skip to the part where you tell me I'm right.
There are events that aren't signature events. So you see guys like the Scottish Open.
Holy shit.
The tune-up for the British Open, or the Open, always a loaded field, right? So it doesn't have to be signature events to have loaded fields, and doesn't have to be non-signature events to see lesser fields. But you do see guys pick and choose based off of, a lot of different things, right? I see it there, Kamlo.
Thank you.
So the next one is the RBC Heritage at Hilton Head, which is a big tournament regardless, right? So it just depends on the tournament. So skipping the Valspar, is that the one in Texas?
There's way too many signature events also.
Yeah, well, there's just, I would argue, way too many tournaments. It kind of gets to the point where some of these guys do need a break, and they look at, hey, where can I take my break? The same way that an MLB player gets, like, if I don't make the playoffs, I get October, November, December, January off, right? I play 162 games, but I still get 4 months off. Whereas the golfers don't necessarily get that based off of the schedule and stuff. And so you want to make sure that you are not burning yourself out, because these guys are taking swing after swing after swing. That's why you see Tiger having all these back surgeries and now his Achilles injury. Like, you see some of these things, like basically they're stress injuries is what's happening, right? From doing that repetitive motion too much. So to avoid those things, you have to take some breaks sometimes. Tennis players do it too because of how long their season is.
They kind of feel like pitchers now a little bit, where they're max efforting a lot of their drives.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of length that's going on where they're max efforting these, like how pitchers max effort pitching constantly. There's a lot of guys throwing 98 to 100, and now there's Tommy Johns left and right.
Yep. I think that's a very valid point, that you didn't see that as much. And part of it was because some of these guys were half drunk when they're out there, so there's only so much effort you could put in when you are, very hungover from the night before 30 years ago. But yes, it's kind of getting down that road, and they have to treat their bodies as such. And if you don't adjust to it, you're going to see more of these stress injuries like a Tommy John, and like these back injuries, or like core muscle injuries, right? And those are things you can't have as an athlete, regardless of sport, but especially in golf, where it is all core stabilization to help generate core and whip to help generate the power that you need to have the length to conquer some of these courses. Last thing golf-wise, before we move on, Live Golf Singapore happened. That course is really cool, by the way. I don't know if you saw it. I forgot what it was like. Was it Sardosa or Sentosa might be the name of the course? That was a very cool course.
I saw Bryson's almost albatross. That was cool.
Yeah, but Sergio Garcia's Fireballs, they shot 10 under at the final round to come from well behind to win their third straight team competition. So they won the week before in Hong Kong. They won in Adelaide the week before. So that's 3 straight for Sergio's Fireballs, which is pretty impressive. Meanwhile, Joaquin Niemann from Chile, he shot a final round 6 under to run away with the individual competition, winning by 5 strokes over Brooks Koepka and securing his second individual victory of the season. Niemann is a guy, I believe, who does not get enough discussion as one of the top players in the world because he plays on Live, but he is, like, in the events that he plays that aren't on Live, unlike in the Asian Tour, if they let him into a DP World Tour competition, he still shows up and wins those things, right? Winning or playing well at, like, some tournaments in Australia against some good competition. He's done that in the offseason, so he's a legit contender. He's a legit contender
about him because he has these incredible results on Live, and obviously, like, his Asian Tour results are also immaculate. But, like, he just doesn't show up when he's, like, offered a spot in the majors.
Yeah, he's not played well historically.
Do you think it's just like the extra pressure, or do you think it's because like courses like Augusta are just so wildly different from what he's playing the rest of the time?
What it is we're seeing a golfer, like, he's relatively young. So we're seeing
Yeah.
a guy in Neiman who this is his prime. Like this looks like his peak that we're seeing him hit. He
100%.
wasn't at that before in years past in the majors. So you saw results of a guy who was young, inexperienced, and not at his peak level, playing against the Dustin Johnsons at their peak, right? The Justin Thomases, the Jordan Spieths at their peak, right? Those guys were always going to outdo him and outclass him. But now I think he has the class. Like he has the all-around game. He's a true three-dimensional player. Driving, irons, putting, around the greens, four-dimensional. He has it all. And there's not a lot of guys who can do that. He does it consistently. I think this is a year I would not be surprised if he wins a major. I would go right now. I'm picking him to win one of the majors. I don't know which major it is. I have to look at it. My gut would tell me like the PGA Championship.
That's the one that he's like performed like in terms of the standings the worst at last year.
Yeah, but again, it's because it depends on the.
He was T22 at Augusta, T39 at PGA, T58 in the Open.
Yeah, the Open I don't think suits him. I think he sometimes flies the ball a little too high to succeed at the Open because of the weather in Britain. But that's why I think like a PGA Championship, U.S. Open, if he's hitting his fairways, which he does frequently, would fit him. Masters is weird. Masters, I don't know. There's a reason like Scotty's won multiple times. There's a reason Bubba Watson's won multiple times. There's a reason for like it just fits.
Course.
Yeah, it just fits certain guys. I don't necessarily think it fits Waco, but that's why I said PGA. PGA US Open would be the two for me that I think he's going to win one of them this year.
Where is PGA this year?
Oh, is it
Oakmont? The Open? But yeah, you're right. The PGA isn't US Open?
The US Open might be at Oakmont.
US Open's Oakmont.
No, who's at the Ryder Cups on Long Island at Bethpage. Okay. Yeah, no, it's eluding me then.
Advice from someone from Long Island.
Donna Changstein.
We're at Quail Hollow for PGA this year. Quail Hollow.
Okay. So yeah, I think he'll get it done. And you know what? If it's not this, I think he's on the cusp. Is I guess the point that I'm making, that he's there.
The fun thing about him, and like obviously, like when you talk about Vegas odds to win a tournament for golfers, like the odds are, unless you're like Scotty Scheffler, everyone's going to be a plus to win, right? So, but Waco is plus 4,000 to win the Masters this year, which is the same as someone like, so to liken him to somebody on the PGA Tour for people that don't watch him, that likens him to that of Patrick Cantlay, who is also plus 4,000 to win the Masters.
Which
like looking at their careers, very similar, right? Don't really show up in the big moments, struggle to crack top, I think Cantlay maybe has one top 10 in the majors. Waco, I don't think has any. But like if you look at Waco's wins, that's kind of comparable to like Cantlay's Korn Ferry Tour wins. Like you look at like some of those like Asian Tour wins. Those could be comparable to like a Korn Ferry.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's one of those, you believe it when you see it. He doesn't have the track record in the majors, but I think he's on the cusp. I think Live, when you look at it again, yes, the critics, but there are more major champions on that tour than there are on the PGA Tour, right? And so he's beating consistently the Brooks Koepkas of the world, right? And that's a guy who's not really slipped. The DeChambos of the world, who we know he won a major last year, right? Both those guys have won majors in the last 2 years. Jon Rahm, he's competing against, right? Lest we forget how good Jon Rahm is, right? Your boy Tyrrell. I'll just throw your boy Tyrrell Hatton in there. I know.
I love
boy. You want me to say it, but
awesome.
But I know he's on a major champion. Yes. But the point is that he is on the same courses with these guys and consistently either sticking with them or outperforming them. And so that's why I think that this Live is giving him kind of confidence. And I think being on the tour with the other South American players, his fellow countrymen Mito Pereira and Sebastian Munoz from Colombia, I think that's helping him. I really do, and I think he's hitting his stride, and I think he might be a force in the next couple of years. This may be his prime, his window to win. Anything else golf-wise before I move on?
No.
We got on a Live tweet again or something like that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
we were on like a tweet collage.
It was on
front and center.
The fans and media were loving Dustin Johnson.
Yeah, it was he played great his first 2 rounds. Final round DJ did not play well and slipped.
That's about right.
DJ looked like vintage DJ, like all around game, driving it with accuracy and power with his fade around the greens was fantastic, and then it just kind of fell apart. Yeah, there we are. Look at that. I'm moving. Before we move on, be remiss if we don't mention our WCME Golf podcast hosted by Nate, the starter Bursack. He's getting his footing going with that. I believe they might do a players recap. They'll probably look out for a Masters preview because that's in about a month or so, a little less than a month. Be on the lookout for our WCME Golf accompanying podcast as well. Now moving on to tennis. All right, I said last week, Indian Wells was happening. Indian Wells is a Masters 1000 tournament, which means the men and the women are both there. Top level competition is there. Indian Wells is one of the biggest tournaments of the year outside of the majors, and had some good stuff happen there. On the women's side, after dropping the first set 6-2, number 11 Mira Andreeva came back to defeat number 1 Arina Sabalenka 2-6, 6-4, 6-3 to claim the BNP Paribas Open title, which is the official name of that tournament. At 17 years old, Andreeva is the youngest champ at Indian Wells since Serena in 1999. She beat number 2 Iga Swiatek in the semis, making her the first player under the age of 18 to beat the top 2 ranked women in the same WTA tournament since the aforementioned Serena Williams. Beat Lindsay Davenport and Martina Hingis at the 1999 U.S. Open. And this is Andreeva's second Masters 1000 title, as she won Dubai earlier this year, and she has the most wins on tour by a female. Her record this year is 19-3, and she's now in the top 10. And she's 17, which is crazy. I mean, some of the names, right? We just had a Lindsay Davenport, Martina Hingis reference. That's crazy. That shows what this girl is doing, right? That Serena, she's in the conversation with Serena. What happened? That's pretty amazing and impressive for her. On the men's side, another up-and-comer that you may not have heard of, number 13 ranked Jack Draper from Great Britain. He smoked number 12 Holger Rune in the final 6-2, 6-2. It took a little over an hour. I mean, that's like unheard of in a men's game. To win his first ever Masters 1000 title, Draper beat two-time defending champ Carlos Alcaraz in the semis, and Draper will now move into the top 10 of the ATP rankings for the first time ever. Draper is electric. I don't know if you ever watched him. He's a lefty, and when you talk about all-around game, he has that, right? The ball comes off his racket a little different than some guys. He's got that explosiveness, but he's not like a massive dude. He's not small by any stretch of the imagination, but he is incredibly athletic. And especially when you combine the athleticism with the lefty, he's got the goods. So he could be someone moving up. And again, I don't even know if he's 23. He's pretty young as well, Jack Draper is. He might be the guy taking the torch from Andy Murray as the face of British golf. And at this point, or not golf, sorry, British tennis. At this point, Draper, I would say men's or women's wise, is the most likely person to win a major or a Grand Slam out of the British tennis camp out there. Thought those were cool. Wanted to mention that. Anything else before we move on?
Nope.
Before we get into our favorites, Kamlo, do you have an Ovechkin goal update for us?
Yeah, so kind of like what I was talking about last week and my things to look forward to. Ovi did get one against the Sharks, and he did have a chance to get one against the Ducks, but he elected to be an unselfish captain and fed the puck to Alexei Protas to net his first career hat trick, which is kind of cool because I believe Protas did the same thing for Ovi earlier in the season. Firing on all cylinders. So we are 7 from tying, 8 from breaking at this point,
yes.
Unless he got one tonight. They're currently playing the Red Wings right now.
That's kind of why I asked.
I'll pull it up real quick. Give me 1 second. But yeah, I mean, things are looking good. I mean, they look like a really, really good team. Oh, that game's over already. Holy shit, that went
That's
fast.
a quick game.
Yes, it is. They started at 7.
No penalties.
See. No,
Hey, we got to get out of here. We got to get on a plane.
Ovi had no goals, 1 assist, 1 shot on target. So no goals for tonight. So he's still 7 from tying, 8 from breaking as of right now. Which
how many games left do we have?
The Capitals will have, let's see, they're 45. I'll just go to the standings.
Math.
Yeah, math is a really cool thing. So they are.
Do some math.
They got 14 games left.
Okay, so he's got to score more than every other game.
Yeah.
Boy, that's good. He can.
Their schedule
Yeah,
is
that's
rated the
tough.
easiest. So coming up in the next week, we have the Flyers. Goals are gettable there because their goalies are not stopping a lot of shots. I think their goalies have...
And their defense might as well not
Sucks.
even be there. Yeah.
Yeah, they have their goalies have, I think, like an 86 and 87% save rating, which
is
isn't
not
good. Then they have the Panthers on Saturday and then the Jets on Tuesday. But then after that, it's going to get wide open. Wild, Sabres, Bruins, Blackhawks, Islanders. Like, then we get the Blue Jackets twice. Like, this is a very gettable, like, ending schedule here.
Yep.
So all eyes on the Great Chase, as it's been labeled. And I think I talked about the Monumental Sports Network getting the games back, right? Yeah, I talked about that last week, so that's pretty cool.
Yep. If you liked what the man Stephen Conlon was just talking about here, you might also enjoy listening to our another accompanying podcast, WCME Hockey, which will be coming soon and shortly, hosted by Scott the Bear Griswold. Be on the lookout for that. Time date indeterminate, but that should be coming down the pike real soon.
That's right.
Yes. Now, moving on to our favorite segment, which is brought to you as always by One Legacy Title and Escrow in Jacksonville, Florida. Visit them at onelegacyflorida.com and follow them on Instagram at onelegacyflorida to see how they can help you with your next house closing. One Legacy Title and Escrow, because your legacy matters. And this week we went with our favorite March Madness Cinderellas. So it could. Yeah. I went with teams. I assumed that's what we were going to go with. Okay.
Yeah.
Who would like to start?
I'll get mine out of the way because I'm sure you and Stevie will be able to talk a lot more in depth. But I'd imagine we're probably going to have a lot of similar ones.
I would think so.
I'm going to go. All right. So honorable mention. I'm going to go the 2013 Florida Gulf Coast, aka
Dunk
City. Yeah.
You know who legitimately picked them in their bracket because he knew more than anyone else that they were going to win.
Doug Howard.
The great Doug Howard, yes.
Yeah. Oh.
That it was he legitimately in his bracket said, no, they're going to beat these guys. They're that good. They should not be a 15.
They upset Georgetown.
Yes.
They were also the first 15 seed to make it to the Sweet 16. So that was pretty cool. Which is going to bring you to my top 5. Number 5, I got the 2023 Fairleigh Dickinson beating Purdue. They're the second 16 seed to ever do it, which brings me to my number 4 team, 2018 the 2018 UMBC demolishing. Sorry, Nick.
Demolished. Yes.
Yeah, that was a...
Again, for the record, there are the text messages to prove it. I said that would happen. You guys know that.
You didn't make it sting any less because I called you after that game, Nick.
No.
Yeah, and our friend of the show, AJ Pittis, our gambling expert, immediately bought the UMBC shirt.
Yeah. Nick, you're
That's a tech move. How many national championships do they have again?
Virginia Tech.
How many national championships?
I was
informed. 0. Even West Virginia got a rifle championship.
We did get a rifle, the 20th rifle championship. But I was informed last weekend that they do have a Bass Pro fishing.
Yes, but it's not an NCAA sanctioned sport.
No, it's not. It's not.
No,
they do have a bass fishing national championship.
That's funny.
Yes.
So number 4 is the 2018 University of Maryland Baltimore College beating UVA by
Baltimore County.
Is it? No, I think it's University of Maryland Baltimore College, isn't it?
I believe it's University of Maryland Baltimore County.
UMBC, the Retrievers.
The Retrievers, yes.
Har.
Dead air.
Yeah, give me a second. I'm looking for it.
You got that comment?
It is Baltimore County.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, sorry, whatever.
This podcast is over.
Yeah, who cares? Yeah, whatever. This is why I went first, just to get it out of the way. Yeah. So then number 3, we got the Sister Jean team, the 2018 Loyola Chicago, right? I mean, how magical was that run?
Pretty cool.
And Sister Jean. Do we have any updates on her? How's she doing?
She's still kicking.
Well, yes, she is. That's right.
I believe. Yeah, the team at the start of the year got some flack because they didn't fist bump her after a game or something.
And here they are in March,
hell.
excluded from the tournament.
Bingo.
Number 2, I'm going to go with the 2011 Havoc defense of VCU. 11 seed to play up in 11 seed to make it to the Elite 8. That's awesome.
No, they made it to the Final 4.
Yes, they did.
Why did I have Elite 8 there? I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? They beat Georgetown, FSU, Purdue, Kansas. I mean, it was big. Havoc defense, baby. And then number 1, it should go as no surprise to anyone, the 06 George Mason. 06 George Mason. Beating Michigan State, University of North Carolina, Wichita State, and Villanova to get to the Final Four. Go Patriots.
Yes. Boy.
Yep. I have one honorable mention. Georgia State with R.J. Hunter making his dad fall off his stool.
Heck yeah.
I believe his dad had like a broken leg or something, a broken foot, and he drilled a game winner and to beat Baylor, and his dad fell off the stool. It was great. Number 5, George Mason going deep. I believe they had 2 bigs that tried out for the NFL that year.
Yeah, I forget the dude. He was at the Giants, tried him out. Gosh, I forget his name.
One was at the Combine, wasn't he? Or was it a pro day?
I thought that was the Giants guy.
Yeah, they started going through, but pretty cool. Shout out Fairfax, Virginia.
Yes.
Number 4 from Richmond, Virginia, VCU, and Shaka Smart. These are like big, massive Cinderella runs. That was a big deal with VCU. Number 3, how about the introduction to Steph Curry? When he was known then as Stephen Curry, because no one knew he was going by Steph, or Stephen is how you would pronounce his name. When he beat Wisconsin.
He ruined it for all of us.
Beat Georgetown in that run,
yeah.
I believe.
George,
yes, because Georgetown sucked for a while.
Georgetown's just getting ripped on in our list. Holy shit.
Yeah, they are.
Well,
Yeah,
don't lose.
Yeah.
That Steph Curry, Davidson, that was like, oh, this is one of those where like you have every now and then when you get some of these Cinderella stories, there's an NBA talent or an NBA player like a Lehigh when they had McCollum. Or,
Did Weber State with Lillard, did they win a game? Weber State?
But like Murray State
with John Morant.
John Morant, yeah. And Davidson with Steph Curry. Number 2, Dunk City, Florida Gulf Coast. I feel like that was just the most fun. That, like, watching them just completely, like, it was like semi-pro. Like, they discovered the alley-oop.
Foul. No, double foul. No, Father Pat. It's 2 points.
No one knew what to do. That was incredible. And number 1, NC State, Jimmy V. The ultimate Cinderella story, winning a national championship over the Houston Cougars with Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler.
Yes.
That to me is the ultimate Cinderella story. The great Jimmy V. I'll hang up and listen.
Okay. Thank you. Now, before I get into my list, I'd be remiss. I love using that phrase. If I did not mention this because we would get flack from our father. The Siena College in 08, 09, I think 09 and 10. As a 13 or 14 seed, they upset Vanderbilt in the first round with Kenny Hasbrook, who was a fantastic player, and Edwin Ubelis. I don't know if you remember these guys. I do. They were great players. And then the next year, they were a 9 seed, because that's how good they were. They got a 9 seed as Siena, and they played Ohio State, and they won in double overtime by like a bucket. So let's give Siena, because again, we're going to hear about it. Just have to mention them. Kamala, we'll get you that cup sometime soon.
I can't.
My 2 honorable mentions, I have St. Peter's from a couple years ago. Doug Edert and the rest of those goons out there. Well, they got to the Elite 8, didn't they?
Oh, did they get that far?
I thought they did, which is incredible for St. Peter's. To do that little school in Jersey City, to get there. The Peacocks, you got to let them fly. So that's one of my honorable mentions. My other one is George Mason, the aforementioned 06 George Mason run with Jim Larinaga as the coach. And like you said, they had a couple guys like try out for football, NFL wise, but really what makes that team so special is that there's like nobodies. Like it's like not like guys that got some of those guys on St. Peter's. Again, Doug Edert stuck out because of his like little gross mustache, but they had some guys out there. But George Mason, it was like, who are these guys? Right. And for them to beat the teams they beat to get to the Final Four was incredible for the Patriots.
Not an easy route.
No. Number 5, Stephen F. Austin, led by Thomas Walkup, the literal embodiment of a lumberjack was Thomas Walkup. He was so good. They beat West Virginia in the first round. I believe that was a 14-3. And then the second round should have beat Notre Dame. Lost on the last second putback because they forgot to box someone out. And they lost by like a point or 2, which was, heartbreaking. That Thomas Walkup, Stephen F. Austin, he got some run like on G League NBA teams. I think the Bulls organization had him
He was a dude.
for a little bit. He was a dude. He was.
I remember the shit coming from West Virginia. Like after that, one of our like centers or someone was like, "Oh, we just didn't really expect them to be that good." Like this is the tournament. What are you talking about, man? Like,
yeah, everyone's that good.
Thomas Walkup just beat your ass up and down that court.
It goes to what you said, though, boy. A lot of these upsets, it's because there's a dude out there who's an NBA player.
Right? Yeah.
He's an NBA player, right? And yes, he didn't have the storied career that CJ McCollum has had, but it's an NBA dude. He was on an NBA roster, so yes, you have to expect that from these teams. That's why they got there. My next one, number 4, is Butler. Back-to-back national championship games. I believe they were an 8 or 9 seed both years. Brad Stevens as the head coach, who's an incredible head coach, by the way. Underrated as all get out. Gordon Hayward on that team. I believe Shelvin Mack was another one of the studs on those Butler teams, but that's amazing. And they were a Gordon Hayward half-court shot rim out from winning the national title over Duke that one year.
Yes.
Doesn't get much better than that, except for aforementioned NC State. I went with the Jimmy V year and last year with DJ Burns as the 11th seed, making that run through the ACC tournament to get there because they weren't going to get there without it, and then making that run through the NCAA tournament to get to the Final Four. And the way they played, too, was awesome and very fun to watch. So the Jimmy V and DJ Burns, NC State. Number 2, I'm surprised this didn't make your list, boy. Northern Iowa and Ali Farokhmanesh.
Yeah,
When they beat
there's
Kansas.
only a certain number.
Yeah, I know. When they beat Kansas, and it's like memory burn in my brain. It's like in the final minute, pulls up from 3 after making a steal. Could have easily gone in for a layup. Pulls up for 3 just to drain it and end the game right there. Like
Bill Raftery would say, onions.
The onions it takes to think of that, not only act on it, but just to think of it and do it is incredible. And number 1 is Davidson and Steph Curry. You could argue that is the most consequential run in the history of the NCAA tournament because of the ramifications of what Steph Curry has meant to the game of basketball. He's changed how we play basketball. He's changed how every kid trains. He's changed it.
Better.
I know. I said
changed it. Yeah, 100%.
That's what I said. Most consequential. Consequential doesn't have to be always positive, right? Consequential means that it has the most consequences of it, right? That run in those games that he won, I believe they got to the Elite 8, right, boy? Davidson did in that year. I think they lost in the Elite 8 to, I'd say it might have been Kansas, actually. But that is, what one was remarkable to watch.
Elite 8.
Unassuming kid.
Losing to Kansas 59-57.
Yeah, right. This unassuming kid going out there who from a little school that no one knows anything about and doing what he did on the biggest stage and parlaying it into the career we've seen him have is incredible. Because I don't know about you, but do you think he's the number 7 overall pick without that run? No, right? And
he
again,
struggles. I would have to think he probably struggles to make a roster. Because you're going to draft him, or maybe not even draft him. And then you're going to say, well, I invested all of my money into this pick over here, so you're going to go here. He probably wouldn't play for maybe 3 years or something and then get into the league and then become
It is the most consequential, I would argue, most consequential tournament run in the history of the tournament because of all the ramifications of what happened. Because like the Warriors franchise right now, I believe is like the second most valuable franchise in the world of any sport, right? It's something crazy like that. So the domino effect of what we saw him do in that tournament is to be measured, really. It's incredible. Anything else before we wrap this up?
Yes. The tournament basically started. I mean, it didn't really start the first 4
allegedly
going on,
yeah,
but these are actually a huge deal for the 16 seeds. I know a lot of people don't like having 16 seeds in the first 4, but if you win, it counts as a tournament win for your school, and you get a lot of money for it.
Yes, you do.
So these are huge for these smaller schools. The first game, Alabama State just won their first ever NCAA tournament game. They beat St. Francis on a buzzer beater.
Oh, that's awesome.
St. Francis, PA, right?
St. Francis, PA.
Is it in there St. Francis, NY? Something like that.
Yes. And UNC right now is beating up on San Diego State 27-13 as we're sitting here. By the way, I haven't watched San Diego State play this year because West Coast team, they're chuckers. Costanza would be proud.
Who's this chucker?
I watched the first, as we're sitting here, I had a split screen watching it, and I just saw 6 chucks in a row that were just complete bricks and like no offense, just like, and it was a steal. It was like great defense steal, and then they just go down and just chuck a 3. What did I just watch?
That's basketball, baby.
That team got in over West Virginia. Both those teams did.
Welcome to.
Oh my God.
All right, give the people something to watch for, Kamlo.
I already outlined. I mean, obviously March Madness, duh. And then keep your eyes on the Great Chase. Like I said, you got the Flyers, goals gettable for Ovi there. Panthers, that's going to be a fun one. And then on the 25th, the big game to watch is Jets Capitals because that's a possible Stanley Cup preview.
Yes, it is.
So those are my things.
Beers I can fit into my gullet since West Virginia's not in. Watching March Madness.
What's the count up to right now?
Right now we're only at 3 Guinness or Guinai.
Guinai.
Happy St. Patty's Day.
Heyo.
All right, you got a long way. Got a long way to get to Boggs, by the way. And for me, NCAA hockey, men's hockey. You have the conference tournaments happening right now, or going to happen this week. I believe the Big Ten finals already set. Number 9 Ohio State versus number 2 Michigan State should be happening this weekend. And the women's hockey, they have their Frozen Four happening this weekend. That's already set, which is kind of cool. So went with that, college hockey.
There you go.
Yes. All right. As we end this, just a reminder to follow us on all of our social media on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Snapchat at WCME_sports. Our episodes drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe on all platforms. Follow us on all those things. We love hearing from you as well because we mentioned our reporters in the field earlier in the show. We love getting the content and stuff from you guys too. Like if you're at an event and you want to DM us or send us something that you saw that was cool or a video you took, send it to us. We'll give you credit. We'll post it. It's that simple. But for the boy, Stephen Vesci, and the man, Stephen Kamlo, I am the coach, Nick Vesci, reminding you to be decent to each other. Have a good one, and we will see you next time. Take care, Guatemala.